Hey, happy good morning to everybody. Hope everybody had a safe, friendly, happy new year celebration. And glad to see so many of y'all back and ready and raring to go. This is the portion of the show where we sit and let all the YouTube notifications go out. I reach down and grab me something to drink, and we wait for the clock on the wall to finish bonging 12 noon Pacific time here. If you're watching this on replay, go ahead and drag that little timeline scrubber past the graphic that you see up on the screen right now. As I've said before, we basically just wait for all the notifications to go out through YouTube that we are live and on the air. And then we wait until the clock strikes 12 Pacific. Then I reach over and hit the button and say, "Hey, y'all. Happy to see everybody back. Happy to see all you folks out there waiting on me." It still freaks me out that this many people really give a sniff enough about anything I have to say to come back repeatedly. I appreciate every one of you, though. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I have absolutely the best viewers on YouTube. I'm going to dispense with greeting everybody personally, one-on-one. And that's mainly because there are just so many of you guys out there now. It still freaks me out that it takes like 10 to 15 minutes to get through everybody. So let me just say, good morning, y'all. How you doing? So we've got people joining from all over the world. I see somebody from Greece in there. I know we have people from Italy, and Israel, and South Africa, the Netherlands. Oh my gosh, the UK. I mean, everybody everywhere. So let's see. What should we talk about this morning? Oh yeah, we're going to talk about my shop shed build. Now, before anybody gets upset at me, okay? I did not really hold anything back from you all. As of my last video, oh my gosh, when did I post that? My last video on the shop was in November, early November. At that time, I was still going by the latest information, and my latest assumption was that it was going to be a while. Everything was on hold simply because, well, the expensive lumber had driven prices up. I was going to go with the nationwide company, and their prices jumped like 20%. And it was just looking like I was going to have to keep socking away more money in savings with no end in sight. Well, then, as I mentioned in the video earlier today, Martin from a company called I Build Sheds up in Tacoma, Washington, right outside of Seattle, he reached out to me first through YouTube comments, asked me what I was going to build, what I was going to do. Well, I knew from the name of his channel that he built sheds. So we got to talking back and forth, and he really just made me an offer I could not turn down. In the interest of full disclosure here, while I'm not going to get into specifics, I was talking to that nationwide company about maybe doing a promotional deal. If they would give me a discount, I'm not angling for a free ride on anything, but if they would give me a discount, I would certainly promote their brand on my channel and, take steps, make a few signs and what have you to put up in the shed so that they were mentioned in every video. And they just basically, didn't react. I never heard back from them. And then Martin came in, and he's in one of these precarious situations where he services the 5 counties around Seattle, Washington, and he doesn't want to grow. So he was not really interested in any promotion. He didn't ask for any. And in fact, I've talked about him more than I think he wants me to talk about him, because he doesn't want to grow. He's busy as it is. And put it to you this way, he's picked up 8 orders since Christmas. And, you know, he does plenty. He's happy. And he's not looking for any attention. Well, he's playing with the wrong person, because I'm going to give him more attention than he wants. So the company, there's a link in the description of this video. The company is called I Build Sheds, and he's local to the Seattle, Tacoma area. If you're in that area, hit him up. He's a good guy. His crew works very well together, as you saw in the video, and I just couldn't be happier. You know, several people have asked me why I didn't build it myself, that I could save a lot of money. Well, that's true, but I'm getting ready to turn 60, and I'm just getting tired. And if I built it myself, there's no way I would have a 12 by 16 shop shed in one day. There's no way I could do that in one day by myself. So again, thank you to Martin and to Tim and to Ron. Now, in the video I said thank you to Ron especially. That guy is a nut. He had me cracking up the entire day. But you know, it's really, really coming together, and it's still kind of sinking in. But now I know that the real work is beginning. I have to get it painted. We're wet. It's raining now as we speak. Tuesday I'm going to have some clear weather. I'm hoping like crazy I'll be able to at least get the trim painted on it. I'm currently inside getting ready for wiring and what have you. I'm not certain what next week's video is going to be. I'm preparing for it to be some of the electrical install. But I am having a licensed electrician come out and set the panel, do all the connections up in the panel, and terminate me and get me turned on. I'm doing all the rough in. I have been an electrician's helper before. I am not an electrician, but I see one of my electrical gurus, Bob Lee, he's out in the crowd in the chat right now. Howdy, Bob. He retired after over 30 years as an electrician. He retired last year, I believe, wasn't it? Or was it late in 18? Or late in 19. Now, I don't remember. But he's been walking me through all this and keeping me on the right track and helping me put everything in up to code. And yeah, we're just cruising right along. So for those of you who are into the numbers, I wanted to make sure I wanted to make sure that I had enough power out in the shop, because what I'm dealing with right now in my current shop shed, the nasty shed as I call it, I'm working with one 15 amp circuit. So I'm running the CNC router, computer, lights, heat when I can get it. I got a sneeze coming on here. Excuse me. I'm running all of that off of a single 15 amp circuit. Well, I kind of fell into a couple of good deals when I started planning this out. Okay, Bob says he retired in March of 2019. Okay, it's been that long. Wow. So, yeah, Bob's been guiding me through all of this stuff and doing a killer job, I might add. Our only problem is when we get together to do a video chat, we will do, thank you, Uncle Bob, we will do about 5 to 10 minutes on the questions I have and his answers. And then we spend 2 hours just talking about life, the universe, and everything. So, so I have to kind of plan ahead when I call Bob. Set aside a block of time. But he's keeping me going on all of this stuff and keeping me on the straight and narrow. So I kind of fell into a couple of deals, as I started to say. I was originally planning on like a 75 amp sub panel out there for the shop, figuring that would be perfect. Then I fell into a deal on Craigslist on some underground cable, and it was 88 feet of cable for $50. So I grabbed it. And then talking with Bob and my other electrical guru, one of my other electrical gurus, Doc Jared Hildebrand, who isn't in the crowd, and Steve Nealon over there at Harneal Media as my other guru, they informed me that that cable that I bought was rated for up to 125 amps. So I thought, well, a 100 amp sub panel would be even better than 75. Go big or go home. And as I was looking at a 100 amp sub panel, it just so happened that 125 amp sub panels, or 125 amp panels, went on sale. So that's what I went with. I have a Square D QO series 125 amp panel that's going out there in the shop shed. So I will have more than enough capacity. It made me think of what the heck am I going to do with all of this, but it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So I see Javi's out there saying you feel so left out of the Guru Club. I haven't talked to you in so long, it's not even funny. And you're an electrical engineer. You're not an electrician. There's a difference. If I want to build a time machine, you are first on my list. So don't feel slighted at all, Javi. It's just simply proximity. I'll get on Facebook Messenger and I'll dial up Bob. Doc is out doing the job, So Javi wants to know, which NEC code revision is Oregon following now? Dude, the code we're still following is bang the rocks together, guys. That's the code that we're following. We're lucky to have electricity. So, yeah, 3 syllables. I'm not sure which NEC code we're following, but Bob is keeping me up on the straight and narrow. So, and it's all working out just fine. And as I say, I have a licensed electrician doing the setting, and he's been happy with everything I've done so far. So, yeah, I'll be running 125 amp panel out there. That's going to be more than enough. And, I'm going to be able to run heat and AC. As soon as I get the electricity in and get the lights in, I'm going to try to start doing these Sunday Q&As from the shop shed. In fact, I've got to go out to the mailbox. The Cat 7 cable that I ordered the other day is here. So I've got to go pull that through and run it in. So it's, man, it's coming together. It's coming together. It's coming together. So if anybody has any questions on the shop shed, feel free to ask. And of course, we're open to questions on the Aspire or V-Carve software, any kind of open Q&A today. So, excuse me. Boy, had that big sneeze and it just knocked me down. Okay, so if there's any questions, go ahead and throw them on out. I see a couple of them here. Midnight Joker says, I have a question that you or Aussie Man were the only people I could think of who could answer it. Okay, if I ask here, it is very okay. Feel free. Jump right in. See, Jeff, Resorter 66. I have a question when you get around to them. I want to do a rectangle with the corners being at a 45-degree angle. Okay, you want 45-degree angles cut on the corners, you can basically come back and do that, draw poly lines at those angles and then snip them back. There currently isn't really a way to make that type of you can make that would be what, 8-sided, that would be an octagon, and then stretch that octagon to the right shape if you wanted to. But the more accurate way would be to go ahead and make the rectangle the size you want it made, and then trim off those corners, draw a poly line from top to the side, trim away that corner, and then do that on all 4 sides. That would be the easy way. Let's see. eCabinets Tips and Trick wants to know, have you ever used the emboss feature in Aspire? No, I have not. No, I have not. Not yet. That's one of the things I want to get into and play around with and explore, because I've not used it at all. No, I haven't gotten to use it. Let's see. Jeff Woody Wan says, wanted to thank you again for all the Vectric videos. Was able to add a new form tool to my database. Okay, good deal. You're very welcome, and terrific. I mean, that's perfect. Let's see. Uncle Bob says, Harbor Freight has really inexpensive 5500 lumen LED lights. I got a deal on, well, I didn't get a deal. I just went for some 4-foot LED shop lights. I'm going to have 6 fixtures in the shop. They are, I believe they're 5,000. I don't have the boxes in here. They're outside. I believe they're 5,000 lumen, 60 or 6,000 K color temperature, for video. I'm setting the place up for video so I can shoot out there. I want good lights. I'll have 6 fixtures on one switch on a dedicated 15 amp circuit for lighting. And I'm going to be painting the inside walls after I get them sheathed, and I don't know what sheathing I'm going to go with yet. But I'm going to be painting it a color called agreeable gray. I don't want hospital white because that brings about reflections and flare out problems on the lens, but going with a very light gray, I think will get me real good lighting there. So let's see. Hobby's Wood Shop wants to know, any plumbing in the shed? No, I cannot put plumbing in the shed. The land use laws here in Oregon, the minute you institute plumbing, it becomes a dwelling unit. And the number of permits you have to get, it just multiplies. So long as there is no plumbing, it's considered an outbuilding. And I fall under those codes. I did not have to get a building permit for this at all. And because it's a low profile, it's less than 10 feet tall, I'm exempt from the setback laws. So that's the main reason I went with what I went with. Was if I had to obey the setback, I would not have been able to build anything at all back there because of the way the lot is shaped. This long angled fence, which is technically on the side of my yard, that's considered the back fence. The setback is 10 feet away from that back fence. I wouldn't have had room to put anything in there. And setback on the side fence over here is 6 feet. Well, I'm 5.5 feet away from that fence and about 4 feet away from that fence. But because I'm under 10 feet, I'm good. But if I were to institute any kind or introduce any kind of plumbing, that would just throw everything out of the water. So, let's see. Let me keep going down on the list here. Harbor Freight LED shop lights. Yes, I'm using LED. I'm a firm believer in LEDs. Oh man, do I like LED lights. With the exception of 2 bulbs in this house, just about everything is switched over to LED. I love them. Let's see. John Gallant says, please do some shows on beginners' bits and feeds and speeds, what toolpath to use and when to use pocket and when to use profile. John, I have. I have a video on the bits that I think every beginner needs, and I'll put a link to that down in the description. Let's see. Get a clean page here. I got so many notes I write to myself. It's not even funny. I'll put a link to that down in the description of this video as soon as we're done here live. And the first, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the first 5 or 6 videos in the Vectric for the Absolute Beginner series, and there already is a link to that series down in the description of this video. The first 6 cover what toolpaths to use, when to use the pocket, when to use a profile, etc. As far as feeds and speeds are concerned, that's a video for the future. In fact, I may go ahead and shoot that and do that for next week's video, but don't quote me on it. It might not be. The short answer to that long question is I stay out of that argument because every machine, every tool, every material is different. But I'll get further into that explanation in the video. I might be doing that this week. I don't know yet. Don't quote me on it. Let's see. Dean Howard says, I'm just transitioning my garage into a shop. What is your receptacle count and type? I'm going to do something different here. Let me back out of this, go over here, and I will screen share here, page up. And all right. This is the framing to the shop shed as I drew it up in Google SketchUp. And I've just kind of placed a few things in here, but this will give you some idea of my layout. The panel is going right here on the front wall. Obviously, these are the double doors. And the panel is going to be right here on this front wall. I have my man wall right there. The top of the box is going to be 5'7" off of the floor because I'm 5'7" and I want to have the panel at eye level. Here in red, I have 2 exterior receptacles that I'm putting in that will be on a ground fault circuit interrupter, and they will be 20 amp circuits. On the east wall of my build here, I have my 3-gang light switches here in blue. And also in blue up here are the boxes for my lights. I just drew rectangles to show my lights as I plan on configuring them down at the bottom of the rafters. 3 on this side, 3 on this side, with plenty of room to add more should I need them. All of the boxes in blue are going to be on 1 circuit. This is a porch light out here to illuminate the door. And just for me, this is a little on-the-air light to signal to my wife that I'm in here recording, so don't come busting in the door and scream at me yet. There's also going to be another porch light out here on the front. This location is going to change. It's going to be up here in this fascia because the door will open and cover that. And so I'll need it up above the door. This box here, hovering in space, I'm not sure that I'm going to use that yet. That may be another 2 pair of duplex receptacles that I mount up here in the ceiling just to run a dedicated line for the router on the CNC. This is my CNC. And this is it's a workbench that I'm looking into placing on that side. You'll see I have here one box mounted for 240 volt, 30 amp. I plan on going with a air-cooled spindle for the CNC, and that will be the receptacle for the VFD that'll mount here on the wall. Around the back, I have 120 volt here, here, and here on the back wall that will service inside should I want to plug in a shop vac or a hand sander or something like that. And then I have a 240 volt here and here in orange, as well as a 120 volt in gray that will be for exterior out the back wall. Eventually, maybe later this year, maybe early next year, I plan on building a lean-to on the back wall, and that will be dedicated 240 volt service for the dust collector on this side and dedicated 240 volt service for a compressor on this side, with 120 volt down here for any other miscellaneous power needs, whether it be a shop light inside or what have you. Along this wall, I have a 120 volt down low, and then 4 120 volts here on the west wall, and then another 2 more 240 volt 30 amp receptacles here. I will be getting my table saw out of storage and changing the wire on the motor for 240 volts, and it'll stay plugged in here. Then eventually I plan on buying a Grizzly drum sander, and that will be plugged in here. Both of these on wheels, so I can roll them out into the middle of the floor, use it, and then push it back over and park it when it's not in use. You see I've got these all color-coded for the circuit they're going to be on. I have another 120 volt. That box needs to move down. And then these over here will be plumbed into this circuit. So everything all told, I'll have a 20 amp circuit on this wall, another one on this wall, another one on this wall, and then another one up here. So that's 4 20 amp circuits there, a 15 amp circuit for my lighting, and then these two are on one 30 amp 240 volt circuit. This will have its own 240 volt circuit, and then these two will have separate 240 volt circuits themselves. I am trying to future proof as well as provide the power that I need within the shop shed, so I can have all the lights running, the CNC running, and turn on the table saw or the drum sander or run a heater or run air conditioning anytime that I need to use it. And having 125 amps at my beck and call will certainly help on that score. So, just as a little pointer, just as a little tip, if you're going to be doing something like this, I would certainly get in and draw it up in SketchUp and try to plan ahead, try to future-proof. It really comes in handy. I mean, it really comes in handy. So, alrighty. Let's see. I see my wife came in and says, I don't scream, I just talk really loud. Well, yes, but if you're in a panic mode, you do scream. So that's the rundown on the electrical that I plan on installing. So, alrighty, let's see. Let me get in here. I hope that answers the question, Dean. As far as running any hard lines for air, I definitely will be running hard lines for air, but I haven't gotten that far. I haven't even gotten that compressor yet. I'm trying to future proof. I don't know what compressor I'm going to go with. So for right now, I'm just going to continue to use my little Campbell House field. I think it's 35 gallon, 25 gallon, something to that effect. 35 gallon. I'm going to continue to use that, and I'll be dragging hoses around on the floor. But when I get a big dedicated compressor hardwired in, then I'll be plumbing hard lines for compressor. But because it's a rather small shop, I may just go ahead and go with black steel pipe, you know. So let's see. Mark Dice wants to know, how long can be a 1/8 nose ball nose bit? Okay. I want a 3D carver project that has some areas as deep as 1.5 inches. For that, you would want to look into a tapered ball nose. You can get some longer tapered ball nose bits, but you're going to find it depends upon how steep that relief is. If you're going into a very steep angle and trying to carve in the bottom, that may be a little bit difficult. But if it's more spread out and more gentle, and it just happens to be 1.5 inches deep, you may not need an extended bit at all. If you're looking for real high detail in a real steep area, look into a extended tapered ball nose bit. But just know that when you start getting into longer than normal bits, you're talking about money, because making that there's a lot more considerations in making that long of a bit. They can't just use regular tool steel, or just, so you're going to pay for it is what I'm saying. I mean, if you look into something like a Mana, who is probably a Mana or Whiteside, maybe Onsrud or one of the higher end tool makers, but it's going to be pricey. Just know that. So, Jeff talking about the octagon, you want the diagonals to start 2 inches back from the corners. Yeah, this is a perfect time to use the guides and put guidelines 2 inches back from the corners and draw your poly lines at a 45-degree angle. So let's see, Lewis Denton, if you're trying to cut through a project and your material thickness varies, should you register off the spoil board and work negatively? That's entirely up to you. I know a lot of people that do that. I try to surface my material, but sometimes you can't do that, especially if you're trying to make something with a rustic look, or maybe it's a wedge-shaped piece, something that doesn't have a flat surface. Personally, what I do if I'm trying to cut through the ding-dong thing, I just measure the thickest part and I cut all the way through it that way. Now, if you're trying to V-carve on something like that, it doesn't really matter. You should always register off the surface and maybe model that surface so that you can project the V-carving down onto the surface of that angled surface. But if you're just trying to cut through it, typically I measure the thickness of the thickest part, and that's what I put in for my material thickness. Now, that's simply because I don't like working in negative numbers. You certainly can set your zeros off of your spoil board surface, and just make sure that you set that up in V-Carve or Aspire, that your origin is going to be on the material surface. But you certainly can. So let's see. John Gallant says, maybe explain the Millwright app for us beginners. I've never used the Millwright app. I'll have to take a look and see what that is. So Let's see. Midnight Joker saying, I prototype a stepper motor drive for my lathe that is controlled by a joystick on a manual fluting sled. Okay. What ballpark size NEMA motor will I need? Cutting up to 1/2 inch bits in 1/8 deep passes. Okay, if you're talking about um, gear reduction is more important than the mounting space side. The mounting of the motor. And let's be clear. That NEMA designation, NEMA, that is simply the bolt pattern. That's a standardized bolt pattern that mounts the motor to the frame. So if you're designing this mount yourself, you'll have to take that into consideration. What you're talking about is holding torque. And I'm running, let's see, my system uses NEMA 23/24. I believe they're 425 inch-ounce motors. And they do just fine. If you're looking for something bigger than that, then you might need to go with NEMA 34. And you're looking at something in the 1100 inch-ounce range. It's more about holding torque than it is that NEMA number. That NEMA number is just, as I said, the bolt pattern, the size of the bolt pattern that holds it on. So there's a lot of things to consider. But gear reduction, because like my rotary axis is like 6-to-1. So for every rotation of the 4-jaw chuck, it's 6 rotations of the motor. And that also will multiply or divide your torque, your holding torque value there. So there's a lot of things to consider. A lot of things to consider. Excuse me. Sorry, I should mute myself when I do that. It's just hard to get to the mute button in all of this. I got several different softwares running at the same time. Okay, let's see here. I hope that answers that question. Let's see. Tales of Matt. Hello, Mark. New to the CNC space, 90 days or so. I'm making signs. Is more flutes better for a cleaner finish? No. I currently use a 1 flute 60 degree and 2 flute 90 degree. That's what I use. I use single flute and 2 flute. Now, normally I don't want anything more than 2 flutes when I'm carving wood. 4 flute bits and above, those are made for metals. And those are made for industrial mills that spin on a slower, spin at a slower RPM. For carving wood, plastics, things of that nature, you're looking at 1 flute and 2 flute bits. One of my tapered ball nose bits, turns out I ordered the wrong one, it's 3 flute. Because when I use that tapered ball nose bit, I'm removing no more than, say, 20 thousandths or 30 thousandths of an inch thick material, I haven't had any problems. But a 1 flute or 2 flute bit is best for wood and plastics because it will clear that chip out of the material and take the heat with it. If you're using 3 and 4 flute bits, there's not enough time for that chip to draw that heat out of there before the next flute comes around and just starts grinding those chips up. They don't have time to evacuate. So single flute or 2 flute is best on a router / spindle that we would use for woodworking. So you will not get a smoother finish. In fact, when I was first starting out, I didn't know that fact and I didn't know any better. I was using 4 flute bits and the edges of almost all of my cuts were burnt bad. So I stay away from 4 flute bits. You can get away with a 3 flute bit, but I tend to stick with 1 or 2 flutes. So, Let's see. Rob Lemke, not to change the subject. What subject? But just wondering what's a good step over for a core box bit. Um, if you're clearing away a large bit of material, I tend to go with 40%. If you're looking for a cleaner bottom surface, somewhere in 30 to 35%. If you're just looking to hog away a lot of material at once, I go 40 to 45%. I don't go over 50% because, again, it's got to eject those chips and get the wood chips and the heat out of there. So now you're probably not going to be using a core box bit for 3D finishing, so I won't even go into that. But general rule of thumb, step over for a good fine finish with a core box bit, somewhere between 30 and 40% of the tool's cutting diameter. And for just general purpose use, somewhere around 40% is good. So let's see. LB Sharp says, didn't you make a video in Vectric that if you create something with slot fitting, if I change the thickness of the material, then you can change the slots? No, I did not. I didn't make any kind of, that I can remember. I haven't made any videos on anything that has interlocking slots. I did talk about the fillet tool, which will help you make those slots fit together. But yes, if you increase the thickness of the material, you will have to change the vectors of the corresponding slots so that the material will fit together. And currently, I don't know of any automatic way of doing that. You would have to go back to each individual one. But, there may be some way that I just am not aware of, but I don't really do projects that require one piece to slot into another. So I'm not aware of any way of doing that automatically. So, let's see. E-cabinets, ticks and trips. Ticks and trips? Trips are for kids. E-cabinets, tips and tricks. Says, I followed your video on rest machining for some reason. Instead of cleaning up the areas missed by the larger cutter, it follows the tool path but cuts deeper than inspected. Maybe I missed a step. Yeah, you might have. You might have. I would go back and check that out. I have never had that issue. What I have had an issue with is the area that I rest machined with the smaller bit came out with a nicer finish than the rest of it, which meant I had to do more cleanup on the area that I didn't rest machine. So, know that going in. Let's see. Hey, Martin, I build sheds. Looks awesome. Ron is a nut. Ron is an absolute nut. Keep hold of him. That's Martin. He's to blame. He's the guy. He's the dude that I'm singing the praises to. Glad you could join me this morning. Let's see. Now, I got to get caught up here. Let's see. And, oh, come on. Where am I at? Are you building any of the airlines, Mark? Dean, again, yes, maybe. I'm not sure. Let's see. RB Woodwork wants to know, how do you plan on moving your CNC? Disassemble and reassemble? The jury is still out on that. I may take the gantry off and then move it. Then again, it just depends. I alluded to it in the video, I believe. My plans are currently to knock out the back wall of the nasty shed, and then me and as many of my nephews as I can get over here as possible, just lift that puppy up and walk it right back walk it right back into the new shed. It's about maybe 15 feet away, and the four of us, we we should be able to do that. Let's see. Mario says, what about roofing isolation? Do you mean insulation? I am exploring my options. I'm leaning heavily and probably will go with spray foam insulation, a minimum of 1.5 inch closed cell spray foam insulation on the entire interior of the shop. And that will seal everything. That is a vapor barrier, and is insulation for the roof, the walls, everything. And then I can come back and add batt insulation or foam board if I want to kind of fill out the walls. That method's called flash and batt, in that you just go about 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick spray foam, and then you add other insulation for sound deadening. And I'm thinking seriously about doing that. Mr. wants to know, do I also mill aluminum? No, I don't. I've not gotten into that yet. And I doubt that I will, because everything that I have seen and everybody that I have talked to all agree milling aluminum is a mess. And I just don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with aluminum chips flying all over the place. So, let's see. Lewis Denton says, I thought spindles were water cooled. You mentioned an air cooled spindle. They're both. They are water cooled and they are air cooled. You have that option. I live in an area where we have temperature extremes from down in close to 0 on the rare occasion, but regularly in the teens, all the way up to over 110 degrees. I don't want to deal with water cooled. I would just as soon deal with air cooled. So, let's see. Mark, can you ask Linda how much for a bucket of cookies? I can ask. Whether or not she'll tell me, I don't know. Let's see. John Gallant, can you do us a favor and make a show once a day instead of once a week? No. I don't have time to do it once a week. Once a day will not happen. I'm sorry. Let's see. Can you explain the difference between final pass step over and clearance pass step over? Yeah, I think I talked about that in one of the 3D modeling or 3D carving videos, but just the short answer is this. The final pass step over is basically when you're doing a finishing toolpath. And that is when you want the most detail possible and you're using a very fine step over. Generally speaking, in my 3D carvings, anywhere between 7 and 10%. It used to be 8 and 10%, but I backed it down to 7 because there are times when I've got a small model and I'm using a tiny bit. I don't want to sand anything. I will use a 7% step over. The only problem is it needs to be a pretty small model. If you're going with something larger, that can take forever. Because like on if you can imagine a 1/32 inch tip or a 1/16 of an inch tip, when you're talking about moving 5%, you're talking maybe moving over 1.5 thousandths of an inch, just a tiny fraction. So if you're doing something that's 1.5 inch diameter, it's not going to take very long. But if you're talking about something that's 16 inches wide, 10 inches tall, you could be there for weeks. So final pass step over is on a finishing tool path when you're making very, very small, light cuts and you want that bit just to move over just slightly so you don't have a lot of cleanup to do. The standard clearance pass step over, I normally set mine, as I said before, somewhere between 30 and 40%. That's where you're clearing out large pieces of material for large areas of material, rather, for like a 3D roughing toolpath, where you just want to get rid of a lot of material all at once and then let your finishing toolpath come in and clean up all the details. That's basically the difference between the two. So generally speaking, I run about 35 to 40% on a clearance pass step over, and anywhere between 7 and 10% on a final pass or finishing pass step over. So let's see. Jim Dockerell, how are you going to keep the dust off the spinning wheels? That's why I'm in another building. Okay. Jim Dockerell says, don't discount PEX for airlines. I'm not discounting anything right now. Like I said, I don't even have the compressor yet, and that's so far down the road, it's not even on the list yet. So, let's see. Uncle Bob says, I burn out my Campbell House field air compressor while running my CNC. Yeah, the only thing I use that compressor for is standard air tools, sanders and what have you. So and for spraying and what have you. So I don't use vacuum tables or anything, and you make a valid point that little air compressor is not made with a 100% duty cycle. It's something like, I don't know, I think 20 minutes per hour or something like that. So John Gallant, Mark, can we use Bosch bits with an X-Carve and a Dewalt 611? Yes. The only thing that matters is you make sure that the shank diameter of that bit matches the collet diameter. If it's a 1/4 inch collet in your router, it just has to be a 1/4 inch shank. That's all. And you can find other size collets. Like I bought a 1/8 inch collet for my Porter cable router. And so that'll fit 1/8 inch shank bits. That's the important part. The brand doesn't matter. Just make sure that if it's a 1/4 inch collet, you buy 1/4 inch shanks. So let's see. PEX and shark bites for airlines, good for over 550 psi. Tested, and the fail point was the 0 ring in the shark bite. Yeah, well, okay. Like I said, that is so far down the list, it's not even... Let's see. Oh, okay, that's why Uncle Bob says he has an ATC on the CNC. No problems. Also recommend an air dryer. Yeah, I'll be going that entire route because, as I say, I'll be using it to spray finish as well. Let's see. Okay, Mark, the Millwright app is a speed and feed starting point. Okay, all right, that's good to know. I don't have any. I like I said, I generally speaking try to stay out of the feeds and speeds argument, but I will do a video on them and explain my my stance on that. Okay. Let's see. Let's see here. What is the best way? This is what is the best way to remove tool marks without sanding all day by hand in small spots? Two things. I use an abrasive bristle or bristle, if you can speak, bristle brush, and I use Scotch-Brite radial sanding discs. I'll put a link in the description. In the interest of full disclosure, they will be affiliate links. So if you have an issue with that, don't click it. But I use 2 different types of bristle brushes chucked in my drill. And one of them is 150 grit. I'll have to double check. And the other one is 220 grit. And I was nervous about it the first time I tried it. And but they worked very well. I also have a 400 grit brush. But when you're talking about something in a drill that's rotating at high speed, grit that high, 400, you're basically talking about burnishing and polishing. It doesn't really remove any material at all. And you can sit there for hours and not have any effect at all. I use those two brushes in my half-inch chuck corded plug-in drill, so I'm not burning out my battery on my regular cordless drill. And then I use the Scotch-Brite radial sanding discs on a little 1/8 inch mandrel. You stack 3 discs on it and screw them together, put it in your Dremel to get into those tight areas. And oh man, do they ever work. I'll put links to both of those in the description as soon as we get done here, which we better hurry up and finish. I need to get caught up here. But there isn't really any way of avoiding sanding. So let's see. Billy Buffington, I'm in the market for a CNC. What's the best horsepower rating for the router? That's like asking what the best horsepower rating for a car is. What are you cutting? You may be able to get by with an 800 watt spindle. You might need a 25 horsepower industrial spindle. What are you cutting? I mean, that's a wide open question. Just anecdotally, I know people who do excellent work with a 1 1/4 horsepower trim router. I know other people who I use a 2 1/4 horsepower router. Most of the folks I know run a 2.2K water-cooled or air-cooled spindle. So it's wide open, but just about anything in the 1 1/4 to 2 1/4 horsepower range is just fine. So, let's see. Let me go back here and, Robert Ripine, thank you very much for the super chat. For some reason, it didn't pop up and tell me that I had a super chat. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Let's see. George W. just checked in. I'll rewatch the chat if you already addressed my questions about tram and spoilboard marks. George and I had an exchange in the YouTube comments, and his question was asking about the creating a surfacing tool path and talking about the profile pass of the pocket tool path and the pocket tool path itself, in why the profile tool path didn't overlap it completely. And the simple matter is it doesn't need to. The pocket tool path is going to go back and forth and clear out the areas it needs to clear out. But it's not going to get into right up to the edge. It's going to leave cusps right up there where the radius of the bit. Okay. I'm getting a, man, sorry about that. I had something going on in the background. And it was annoying as heck, where the bit comes up to that profile edge and stops and then does its step over and makes a next pass down, it's going to leave little rounded areas in there where it can't get to. So that's what that profile toolpath is for, or that profile pass within the pocket toolpath is for, is to go in and clean up those cusps. So let me throw together a quick demonstration here in Aspire. I'll share my screen here. Okay, I've got a little rectangle here. Make sure I am sharing. I am. Let me come over here. We'll center this up and I'll do a pocket. And I will, we'll just use that. And I'll do raster. Now, if you notice, if you're using the offset strategy, there is no profile pass. It doesn't have one because the offset will take it out there to clear it out. So it's not needed. It's only on a raster strategy where your bit is going side to side or top to bottom. Then you can say either no profile pass, make your profile pass first, which is what I normally do, or you can make it last. And the reason I make my profile pass first is that's an easy way for me to see where that bit's going to go and make sure that it's within the constraints I want it to be. So let me go ahead and just do no profile pass. Calculate it. Oops, yeah, you got to select a vector mark. Let's calculate that. And we'll start previewing here. And let's go ahead and stop it. Now, if I come in, turn this to the side, we can see these marks right here. Those are the cusps. Those are the area where that round bit can't get. And that's all this profile path, that profile pass is for, is to come along after this is cut and remove those cusps. So it doesn't need, okay, that tool path is done and I had set it up with no profile. So now let me go back in here and I will add my profile pass first, calculate it, reset my preview, and I'll stay zoomed in right here. And I'll preview it, and it did it very fast, but it went around and it cut that profile first. So now when it starts going back and forth and clearing, there are no cusps there for it to take care of. That's the only point that I was trying to make. If your profile, let me reset this and come back out here to make one last point. And that is, if you're surfacing the entire surface, when you make your tool path out here, when you create your vector, you need to create your vector to be larger than your surface, the surface of the spoil board you're going to be carving. That puts that profile pass way out here. Now, obviously, I wouldn't go this far out. What I would do is make this boundary, your vector, half of the tool's diameter larger. So if I'm using a 1-inch bit, I would make this vector half-inch taller this way, and this way, and this way, and that way. That way, the center of your bit is going to be right along the edge. So it will carve into the corners and everything else. And then you do your profile pass. It cuts all of this. Then as your bit comes along, nothing is missed. Any cusps would be out here somewhere. That was the only point that I was trying to make. So I hope that answered that there, George. I do appreciate the question. And keep them coming. So, all right, let's see. Let me go ahead down here. Okay, talking about Mike Mazalik, talking about the step over setting in the tool database for V-bits. Okay, so was, all right, that was talking about the step over on the clearance step over versus the finishing step over. Is that a, go into the tool database here and take a look real quick. Oh yeah, that is a consideration. If you're talking about a V-bit, and this is back to the discussion about final pass step over and clearance pass step over. Um, Generally speaking, on V-bits, I'm running. Let's see, make sure that that's a consistent number. Yeah, on my final pass step over, I run 3%, and on clearance pass step over, I run 5%. And again, that's the same issue. It's when you're clearing out and hogging out a lot of material, it can step over quite a bit, because you're just trying to hog out the material. Then when you come back with that final pass, a real tiny step over will clean up a lot of a lot of the trails left behind on with the V bit. Thank you for that, Michael. I missed that. I'm trying to catch up on comments here. Let's see. What dust collection setup are you going to use, Joey? I don't know yet. That's still kind of down on the list yet. I'm still got to get the I still got to get the electricity run in. Okay, I think I'm getting caught up here finally. Let's see. Did I miss something from? And whoa. All right, I'm going to say it anyway and let YouTube get mad if they want to. Peckerhead Carving 78, the single greatest username on YouTube. Thank you very much for the super chat. I do appreciate it. Let's see. Thank you for that. Let's see. John Howard, do you have a video on making cutting boards? I'm having problems drawing the handle. No, I don't, but I am going to be doing some cutting boards. Believe me. I've had a couple people ask. So let's see. John Gallant, Mark, we need a vid on step overs on some bits such as end mills and tapered ball nose bits. It looks like it. I'm going to have to do a video on step over. So with that, I think I'm caught up. Did I get everybody's question answered on the shop shed? Basically, I've got too much power going into it, and I want to keep that going. I'm going to have enough power for that shed and another one and another one, and I like it that way. Holy cow, we've been on here for over an hour. I need to go ahead and end this. I see Linda and Martin are making deals on cookies. Thank you very much for doing that, Linda. Thank you very much for doing that, Martin. You two talk about that. I'm out of that discussion. Romeo, let's get to Romeo's question here, and this will be the last one. I have V-Carve desktop. Do I upgrade to Pro or to Aspire? That's your choice. That is your choice. You can do V-Carve Pro will basically let you carve a larger area, use it for a larger machine, but it will not let you create a 3D model. You can still import and carve a 3D model, but you cannot create one or edit one. If you want to get into creating and editing 3D models, you will need Aspire. The choice is 100% yours. So there are more differences other than that between V-Carve Desktop and V-Carve Pro, but that is the main feature. V-Carve Pro will let you use gadgets. It will also work with a larger machine. So, but there are more differences. Head over to Vectric's website and look at their product comparison page. You'll get the complete lowdown there. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. I want to give a special shout out to Richard. I know he was here earlier. Thank you very much, Richard. I want to say thank you to everybody who has clicked those donation links down in the description and sent me a donation. I really appreciate you guys more than you'll ever know. I really appreciate the folks who have hit that super chat down there. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody. Just one more final little notice here. Last night at about 9 o'clock, we hit 25,000 subscribers. I say we because I didn't do that. Y'all did it. Watch for a 25,000 subscriber giveaway soon. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it because I want to reward you guys who are subscribers. I don't want to reward somebody trolling around YouTube looking to win a prize. So, more on that a little bit later on. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your support. Happy New Year, everybody. And y'all take care. Go out and do something. Bye-bye.